In the depths of ancient lands, when the world was young and faith was tested in ways we can barely imagine, there lived a man whose story would echo through the corridors of time. His name was Ayyub, known to many as Job, and what happened to him defies every assumption we have about justice, suffering, and the nature of divine love. Have you ever wondered what it truly means to lose everything? Not just your wealth, not just your comfort, but everything that defines who you are in this world. Most of us have never faced such a trial. Yet the story we're about to uncover will shake you to your core and reveal truths about human resilience that you never knew existed. If this already stirs something deep within your soul, comment 777 below to say you're ready for this journey. And to those of you who've been with us through every story, every revelation, your presence doesn't go unnoticed. You are the reason these ancient truths continue to breathe life into our modern world. But here's what most people don't understand about the story of Ayyub. This isn't just a tale of suffering. This isn't merely a lesson in patience. This is a profound exploration of what happens when everything you thought you knew about life gets stripped away, layer by layer, until only the essence of faith remains. And what Ayyub discovered in those darkest hours might be the most powerful truth ever recorded in human history. Now listen closely, because what you're about to hear isn't just ancient history. It's a mirror reflecting the struggles we all face, the questions we all wrestle with, and the hope we all desperately need. The story of Ayyub speaks to every soul who has ever asked why good people suffer, why the righteous face trials, and whether there's any meaning in the pain that visits us all. Are you ready to discover what it means to hold on to faith when everything else has been taken away? Are you prepared to witness a man who faced the unimaginable and emerged with something more precious than everything he had lost? Stay with us until the end, because the lessons hidden in Ayyub's journey may be exactly what your heart has been searching for. The story of Ayyub begins not in tragedy, but in tremendous blessing. Picture a man living in the land of Uz, a region blessed with fertile fields and flowing streams, where prosperity wasn't just a dream, but a daily reality. Ayyub wasn't merely wealthy, he was extraordinarily blessed in ways that made him the envy of entire nations. Scripture tells us that Ayyub owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 donkeys. His household was vast, filled with servants and workers who looked to him not just as an employer, but as a protector and provider. But numbers alone cannot capture the magnitude of his blessings. What made Ayyub truly remarkable wasn't his material wealth, but the richness of his character. He was known throughout the land as a man of perfect integrity, one who feared Allah with genuine reverence and turned away from evil with unwavering determination. His reputation for righteousness spread like light across the darkness of a morally confused world. Every morning, Ayyub would rise before dawn and offer sacrifices for his children, just in case they had committed some sin in their hearts during the night. This wasn't mere ritual. It was the overflow of a heart so devoted to righteousness that he couldn't bear the thought of any impurity touching his family. Can you imagine such devotion? Such careful attention to spiritual purity. His children, 7 sons and 3 daughters, lived in harmony and abundance. They would feast together, celebrate together, and share the joy that comes from being part of a family blessed beyond measure. Ayyub watched over them with the tender care of a father whose heart overflowed with gratitude for every moment of peace and prosperity. But in the unseen realm, something was stirring in the heavenly council, where angels gather before the throne of the Almighty. A conversation was taking place that would change everything. Among those present was Iblis, the great deceiver, whose heart burned with jealousy at the sight of human faithfulness. Allah, in His infinite wisdom, drew attention to His faithful servant. "Have you considered my servant Ayyub? There is no one on earth like him, blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil." These words weren't spoken in ignorance, but in perfect knowledge of what was to come. The response from Iblis was swift and venomous. "Does Ayyub fear Allah for nothing? Have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has? You have blessed the work of his hands, so that his flocks and herds are spread throughout the land. But now stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." This challenge reveals something profound about the nature of faith and the reality of spiritual warfare. Iblis was essentially arguing that human devotion is conditional, that people only serve Allah when life is comfortable and blessings flow freely. It was an accusation that struck at the very heart of what it means to worship the Creator. The divine response came with both permission and limitation. "Very well then, everything he has is in your power, but on the man himself do not lay a finger." With these words, the stage was set for one of the most extraordinary tests of faith ever recorded in human history. What happened next would shatter every assumption about prosperity, security, and the relationship between righteousness and earthly blessing. In a single day, messengers began arriving at Ayyub's door, each bearing news more devastating than the last. The first messenger arrived breathless with terror. The oxen were plowing, and the donkeys were grazing nearby when raiders attacked. They carried off the animals and put the servants to the sword. "I am the only one who has escaped to tell you." Before Ayyub could fully process this loss, another messenger appeared with equally shocking news. The fire of God fell from the heavens and burned up the sheep and the servants, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you. The words hit like physical blows, each revelation more incomprehensible than the last. How could such calamity strike a righteous man? But the devastation wasn't finished. A third messenger stumbled forward with news that would have broken most men entirely. The Chaldeans formed 3 raiding parties and swept down on your camels and made off with them. They put the servants to the sword, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you. 3 catastrophic losses in rapid succession. Decades of careful building, generations of accumulated wealth, all swept away in moments. But even this wasn't the end of the trial that would test the very foundations of Ayyub's faith. Then came the messenger whose words would pierce deeper than any sword. While your children were feasting and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house, a mighty wind swept in from the desert and struck the 4 corners of the house. It collapsed on them and they are dead, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you. Can you imagine that moment? The silence that must have followed those words. In the space of hours, everything that had given meaning to Ayyub's earthly existence had been torn away. his livestock, his servants, his wealth, and now his precious children, all gone in what seemed like divine fury, unleashed without warning or explanation. Most men would have crumbled under the weight of such devastating news. Most would have cursed the heavens, declared their faith shattered, and turned their backs on the God who had allowed such catastrophe to befall a righteous man. But Ayyub's response reveals something extraordinary about the nature of true faith. Rising from where he sat, Ayyub tore his robe in the ancient expression of grief. He shaved his head as was the custom of mourning. But then, in an act that defied every human instinct for bitterness and in blame, he fell to the ground in worship. His words echo across the centuries with stunning power and surrender. Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. These weren't the words of a man in denial or shock. They were the declaration of someone whose understanding of faith reached deeper than circumstances, whose relationship with the divine transcended the temporary gifts of this world. Scripture records that in all this, Ayyub did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing. While his world collapsed around him, his integrity remained intact. While everything visible had been stripped away, something invisible and unshakable remained rooted in his soul. But the test wasn't over. In the heavenly council, Iblis appeared once again before the throne, his accusations growing more desperate and vicious. "Skin for skin," he declared with venomous certainty. "A man will give all he has for his own life. But now stretch out your hand and strike his flesh and bones, and he will surely curse you to your face." The challenge had escalated. It wasn't enough to take away external blessings. Now the attack would be personal, physical, designed to break not just Ayyub's circumstances, but his very will to live. The permission came with the same divine limitation as before. "Very well then, he is in your hands, but you must spare his life." What followed was a torment that medical experts still struggled to identify with certainty. Painful sores erupted across Ayyub's body from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. These weren't mere skin irritations, but agonizing boils that made every movement torture, every breath a reminder of suffering. The man who had once sat in the gates of the city as a respected leader, whose counsel was sought by princes and whose wisdom guided entire communities, now found himself sitting among the ashes outside the city walls. He scraped his infected flesh with broken pottery, the only relief he could find from the constant burning and itching that consumed his days and haunted his nights. His appearance became so disfigured that even his closest friends struggled to recognize him. The prosperity that had once marked him as blessed now seemed like a distant dream, replaced by a reality so harsh that death itself began to seem like mercy. Yet still he maintained his integrity. Still he refused to curse the name of his Creator. Even his beloved wife, watching her husband's prolonged agony and remembering their children who would never return, reached her breaking point. "Are you still maintaining your integrity?" she asked, with the bitterness of a heart pushed beyond endurance. "Curse God and die." Her words weren't born of malice, but of desperation, the plea of someone who could no longer bear to watch the suffering of the one she loved. But Ayyub's response revealed the depth of his understanding about the nature of divine relationship. "You are talking like a foolish woman." he replied gently. Shall we accept good from God and not trouble? The question wasn't rhetorical. It was theological, cutting to the heart of what it means to trust in a sovereignty that encompasses both blessing and trial. In all this, Scripture emphasizes again, Ayyub did not sin in what he said. His faith had been tested by loss, by physical agony, by social isolation, and even by the doubts of his closest companion. Yet it remained unbroken. But the most challenging part of his trial was yet to come, for sometimes the cruelest wounds are inflicted not by enemies, but by those who claim to speak for God. When Ayyub's 3 friends heard about all the troubles that had come upon him, they set out from their homes and met together by agreement to go and sympathize with him and comfort him. These weren't strangers or casual acquaintances. Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar were men of standing, respected for their wisdom and knowledge of divine matters. When they saw him from a distance, they could hardly recognize him. They began to weep aloud, tearing their robes and sprinkling dust on their heads. For 7 days and 7 nights, they sat on the ground with him without saying a word, because they saw how great his suffering was. His suffering was. And so we reach the end of Ayyub's extraordinary journey, a story that began in unimaginable blessing and descended into the depths of human suffering, only to emerge with truths more precious than gold. What we've witnessed isn't just the tale of one man's endurance, but a profound revelation about the very nature of faith itself. Ayyub's story teaches us that true devotion isn't conditional on our circumstances. It doesn't rise and fall with our bank accounts or flee when tragedy strikes. Real faith is forged in the furnace of trial, refined by suffering, and proven authentic when everything else has been stripped away. The man who lost everything discovered that he actually possessed something that could never be taken from him. In our modern world, where comfort is expected and hardship is seen as failure, Ayyub's example stands as a powerful reminder that our relationship with the divine transcends the temporary gifts of this life. His words echo across the centuries, challenging each of us to examine our own hearts and ask the difficult question, would our faith survive if everything we held dear was suddenly gone? The story of Ayyub isn't just ancient history. It's a mirror reflecting our own spiritual journey, our own struggles with doubt and pain, and our own desperate need for hope that endures beyond circumstances. May we find in his example the courage to trust, the strength to endure, and the wisdom to never give up, no matter what storms may come. If this story has stirred something within your soul, share it with someone who needs to hear that their current chapter isn't their final story. Subscribe for more profound tales that illuminate the deepest truths of human existence. Until we meet again, may your faith remain unshakable, just like the man who lost everything but never lost hope.